Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 20th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First up tonight is the adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held May 4th, 2015. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beale. Any deletions, additions, recommendations? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is the minutes of the special council meeting held May 12th, 2015. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Oates. Additions, deletions, any comments? Councillor Patterson? Oh, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. My notes tell me here I have to pause. All right, you have the agenda before you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation of the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beale. Being no comments, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Well, first of all, tonight we have a very, very important presentation by the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department. It's a long-term service award. And frankly, I'm kind of stumped, because this young man keeps telling me he's 30 years old, and yet I read that he's getting a 25-year service award. So we'll have to get that sorted out at some point in time. Chief Banks, would you please come forward and do the honors, please? And by the way, this young man spells his first name the right way. He spells it M-A-R-C.
Yeah, we won't get into that. Thank you, Your Worship. We're here tonight to recognize Deputy Chief Marc Norris for reaching a significant milestone in his fire service career. Since joining the department in April of 1990 as a junior member, Marc has worked his way up through the ranks of our department. Marc served as a volunteer firefighter for 12 years, was promoted to the rank of lieutenant in January 2001. As a volunteer, Marc developed a passion for the fire service and took it upon himself to work towards a career. Marc was hired as our current Deputy Chief of Training and Operations in March of 2002. Marc's passion for training members of the fire service has benefited our department in many ways. He's committed to ensuring our members have the necessary skills needed to provide high level of protection to our community. The strength of our program, our training program that Deputy Chief Norris has put together shows when our members are attending other training outside, as they're always well prepared, and it's not uncommon for us to get comments on the professionalism and the level of training that our members display, and that's sort of become a hallmark of Parksville Fire Department, and that's largely due to the efforts that Marc puts into our training program and his dedication to the fire service. His training was, he was recognized in 2010 by the BC Fire Training Officers Association as Trainer of the Year for his efforts in training towards the fire service. So if I could have Deputy Chief Norris come up, in Your Worship. I got too much stuff here. As long as they don't knock it over. Anyways, Marc, congratulations on 25 years. I still remember when you first came into the hall. Yeah, probably we might have some pictures that we could show one day, but we won't go there because there's pictures of me there too. So, yeah. Anyways, Marc, on behalf of Gordon Anderson, the Fire Commissioner for the province of BC, myself and the rest of the members of the Parksville Fire Department, and I'm sure Council as well, congratulations on 25 years and the 25-year BC Long Service Award.
I could say something more about a name like Marc, M-A-R-C, but I won't. We have to move on. We have 3 delegations this evening, and the first delegation is the Parksville Community and Conference Center. Executive Director Margaret Spruitt is here of the Parksville Community and Conference Center Society regarding the Community Carnival Day event to be held on June 20th to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Parksville Community and Conference Center. So Margaret, you have the floor. Turn the button on, move the microphone around, and it's all yours. Welcome.
Thank you. As most of you know, this community center is run by the Parksville Community Center Society, which is a nonprofit group. And as Marc said, we're very happy. We have been serving the community for 15 years. And we want to say thank you to the citizens. So we've come up with a Community Carnival Day. Basically, it's going to be a free event, different activities for people to do. But, you know, if you guys want to help, I have a dunk tank. I'm looking for people. Anybody? Thank you. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an interactive thing for everybody. Hopefully we get enough people. We have put it out there for all the different community groups. Still waiting, of course. It's always waiting, but hopefully they'll all come on board. But we just want to invite you guys to come and participate, and hopefully it'll be a good event.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Margaret? By the way, does anybody want to make a motion to nominate somebody from council for the dunk tank? Anybody want to make?
Well, yes, Your Worship, I would, and I think it's appropriate that we give it to the person that, who prides themselves on being able to raise the most money. Or they say that, although Councillor Beale, I suppose, now I'm starting to think maybe it's Councillor Beale, but I think Councillor Greer would make a great candidate for the dunk tank.
I have a seconder for that?
I would volunteer, except I'm suffering with a bad back and a bad neck, and everything else is bad as well, so thanks anyway.
Well, we'll try and find somebody, Margaret.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions for Margaret? Thank you. And thank you for letting us know about this. What time of day again, June 20th? Is it all day?
It's from 10 to 4.
10 to 4, okay.
So.
Got it down. Good. Thank you. Thanks very much. The next delegation is the Parksville Wetlands Initiatives, and we have an update from Christopher Stevens. And Christopher's here. I saw him walk in. Hi, Christopher. Welcome. You've been here before. Make yourself at home. Be sure to turn the microphone on, Christopher. Okay. Bring it closer to you. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Your Worship and Council members and staff, thank you for the opportunity to present 2015 on behalf of the Parksville Wetlands Initiative once again. So definitely was here in 2012 to present on the values of this community asset located on the 84-acre parcel at the southwest edge of Parksville near the city water wells. And there would be more people here tonight if it were not for a meeting watershed event that is being held in the Nanu's Bay area, but I'd also like to, in their absence, thank the community for their support and acknowledge the traditional First Nations territory upon which this valuable ecosystem is located in the Coast Salish traditional lands. All right, so introducing the Parksville Wetlands Initiative. In 2012, as founder of the Parksville Wetlands Initiative, I presented to City Council on the importance of Parksville Wetlands as a community asset. Securement options were shared, and there was a significant discussion for how to protect the 84 acres, including wetlands, forests, and city water well recharge areas as a valuable part of our community. The Parksville Wetlands, adjacent woodlands, and well fields form a significant green infrastructure area within the ALR in Parksville. So, as a significant island feature, the Parksville Wetlands are filled with migratory birds that depend on this habitat as they migrate from as far as South America and locally, using the intact habitat with a high degree of quality, undisturbed state that sets it apart. So wetlands are essential for a great percentage of these birds, yet many of these sites have been lost. And a little bit later I will talk about just how significant the declines have been in the area and how important the Parksville Wetlands are for maintaining these populations of birds in our community. So prior to my MSc studies, I've been very interested in habitat and avian conservation for many years, growing up near this wetland in the city of Parksville. This was a very significant part of my time in this community as a young person, and these kind of resources are part of why I've chosen to stay in Parksville and see how much I can achieve in the environmental field. Seeing how local bird life used the Parksville wetlands inspired my conservation and sustainability studies, birding since childhood, and viewed many special birds at the site, which started my efforts prior to getting involved in environmental consulting work. So that was me doing the environmental work for my MSc last year, which I completed in some local parks. That's continuation of my work of the wetlands, and the Parksville Wetlands being located near, okay, that's why it skipped right past. So the Parksville Wetlands being located near the city water wells and in a primary migratory bird flyway made the project stand out. So once I was able to describe the values, the city of Parksville decided, based on my recommendations, to secure the property as a protected area for the city of Parksville. And in recognition of the values, the city made an offer to the owners, Ermineskin Tribal Enterprises, previously, which was turned down and then followed by a development application. So my goal tonight is to introduce the values of the Parksville Wetlands and the commendable efforts the city has made with the support of the community to date to understand and secure this property, which started with my efforts to educate and raise awareness, because our environment is only able to be maintained as a green infrastructure asset when we have the facts at our fingertips to make the right decisions. So the city made a very good effort to acquire a property, but it was turned down, and then the owners applied to the city to have the land removed from the ALR. So here is the property where the Ermineskin Nature Park is located. That's under covenant. And this entire section has been subject to repeated development applications. It's 52 acres, and it has a large open water wetland you see on the picture. It has city water wells, and buffering the back southwest edge of Parksville, it is of imperative ecological significance for this to be secured. The value of the property is such that if it were lost, it would be like an inland version of losing much of our estuary. It's a very important part of our land use matrix. When I completed my MSc, I used Parksville as my virtual study area, looking at all the maps as well as the ground truthing. And having a significant greenbelt near water wells and wetlands maintains the resilience of our community and eliminates significant ecological costs, flooding, drought down the road. So last time the owners attempted to apply to have this development go forward was in 2013 after the city applied. So there's a repeated pressure going on, and it's become very clear over time that the property is something the city does not want developed, and the main question is how can it be secured for the future to ensure that we don't have the equivalent of losing our estuary on the inland version. Regularly brought forward to council. So this is what it looks like on the ground. It's a very beautiful combination of land and water, but beauty is always a good indicator of practicality when it comes to environmental resources. Fresh, clear water, lush vegetation. This is one of the most valuable types of green infrastructure you could ever have in a community, and making it close to our well fields is the biggest concern that could be brought forward when development applications are concerned. I'm very much in favor of sustainable development, and the position of a Parksville Wetlands Initiative is that this site is one of those sites that has to be left alone because so much impact has already occurred nearby that if this site is not secured, the city water wells could be compromised and the watershed values would be significantly impacted. The Ermineskin Nature Park is of exceptional ecological value, but having the wetlands in the foreground makes it so much more valuable. The recharge zones and valuable habitat all stand out to make this ecosystem one of the most valuable sites in the region. One of the biggest challenges, just stepping away from the presentation, in North America, which I will get to in a moment, with green infrastructure decline and wildlife population declines, is the fragmentation of habitat. So any attempt to break up the property would significantly impact its value for the community. This area falls into a priority list identified for securement in Parksville's OCP, which is one reason why the cities took such decisive action previously to secure this property. Our natural environment is what the city of Parksville uses to market itself very wisely, and this contributes to making Parksville a destination. It's one of our 4 great natural areas in the community. You can look at Raft Trevor, the estuary, and the Parksville wetlands, as long as the Englishman River. In order to achieve our sustainability goals, we need to find the best possible way to secure this, and that's why I'm making the effort to ensure the new council is brought up to speed with important developments and the legacy of the city's actions to date on this matter of import. This is one of my favorite migrants from the site, the yellow warbler. It's a South American bird. Anybody should stand in the corridor of Hearst and Wrens in early spring and listen to the incredible diversity of bird life singing in the wetland. It does rival the estuary, actually. It's a real treasure. All colors and shapes, all finely adapted to this amazing environment. Parksville's remaining wetlands stands out because we have lost over 50% of wetlands, even up to 70% in some areas of Vancouver Island, and this is our last remaining wetland of its type, and it is a sensitive ecosystem inventory polygon. If any impacts, as have been discussed, occur, it would significantly impact the wetland because the upland is essential to maintain the value of the wetland. I did a bit of review work at Buttertubs. This is just a write-up I did on some notes volunteer. And one of the problems of Buttertubs is the loss of habitat around the marsh. Watershed maintenance becomes more and more expensive over time, as we're seeing with our watershed when the land surrounding the watershed feature is lost. Where 87 bird species have occurred. This is Virginia rail, which I amazingly got a photograph of many years ago. Along with snipe, these migratory marsh birds use this site as our key marsh that stands out in Parksville, just like Qualicum has Hamilton Marsh and Buttertubs is in Nanaimo. This is our marsh. This is where our marsh birds are found. Very special. Started watching them as a kid, and that's how this all started. In my 20,000th report, I noted that 1/3 of the species you might see in the Mid-Island are here. Songbirds and marsh birds indicate the health of our environment, and the fact that they're still here indicates that this environment is definitely worth continuing to work towards protecting. In my thesis I did at Royal Roads, the goal was to look at bird populations and see what they're telling us about our environment, and you can reduce it to meters and acres. This site is just perfect, but if broken up, the damage would be significant to our resource areas. These birds tell us the condition of our watershed. Both to a layman and according to rigorous science, this can be proven. Many songbirds in this area indicate a rare and healthy habitat. Many migrate thousands of kilometers, and the adjacent woodlands altogether form the habitat that supports quite a high percentage of the birds we see in yards and the estuaries. I've actually mapped out how the wetlands support birds moving back and forth to the estuary in our yards. Flickers, thrushes, warblers, tanagers, all the really colorful ones and the less familiar birds, which is becoming a larger and larger part of our community through ecotourism. And my work as a bird tour leader, I've really enjoyed being able to share what we have and can be proud of as a community. Parksville wetlands being a very important part of that. Forming an essential green belt, the Parksville wetlands is the counterpart to the English and estuary at the back of the city, and there are high ecological values according to key wetland ecology factors, and allows the city to be surrounded by green infrastructure. If we can find a way to protect this into the future, we will be in the forefront of green planning according to science and local governments, regulations and standards, and we are very well supported by policy and the city's actions to date. Here's one picture of an owl in the Parksville area. There are a number of raptors that use these areas, and that is useful for pest control and for serving as valuable indicators of environmental conditions. First Nations culture has many stories I would take far too long to get into, and there are many values to health and education when it comes to a resource like a wetland. There's so much natural history to be aware of. Our resiliency, our health as a community, our access to nature, our ability to support wildlife depends on preservation and management of these habitats. So, being located over Aquifer 216, the Parksville wetlands support the city's groundwater recharge, filtration, flood mitigation, and water quality services from a natural perspective and save us a lot of money. However, there have been proposed changes in land use over the years as we get to the end of the presentation. There have been several applications, and as I've said, it would be significantly impacted from a point of our value to our community if this were to actually happen. So it would be very good for the city to find ways to continue looking at how to protect the Parksville wetlands into the future. Community policies, public support, and previous council efforts show that securement is a priority. This is a very unique asset, and raising awareness is a continued goal, along with community leadership planning for the future. How can we achieve this? We can look at how other communities have secured wetlands. We can hold to our policy of saying this is an AOR property. It is extremely important in its uniqueness, in its entirety, in its integrity as an intact wetland complex with forest and water wells, and incredibly valuable for wildlife and quality of life. We can attempt to still build a relationship with the owners to secure it. As we have worked to secure a beach or a branch with our policies, we can secure wetlands. So strategic approaches are looking at the Green Bylaws Toolkit, which gives local government an incredibly powerful set of tools to secure areas of importance. Just as we can secure road allowances, we can secure our watershed resources that are key to the survival of the community. There's even expropriation as an option when a property is of great value and the community would like to have control of that watershed resource. That's a very valid, very straightforward procedure in that context when there's a very valid reason that is being backed up to date. But then, with that in the back pocket, there is always negotiating and acquisition. I would like to encourage the city to continue to pursue securing this property. I will be there to support that effort on behalf of the Parksville Wetlands Initiative. Local government can highlight the importance of well fields, wildlife, and conservation, and these considerations have come to the forefront of green planning and how local government can proactively handle land use rather than continually react to land use applications that create great concern for a community. Thank you for learning about the Parksville wetlands tonight. I'd like to see the efforts continue, supported by our policies and our tools we have. It would be wonderful even if this council could be the one that secures this resource for the community. This work is something that will make a difference in our present and our future. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to continue sharing what the Parksville wetlands means to our community and how we can maybe have a chance to secure this resource. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Christopher. You've certainly given us lots of food for thought. Can I get a copy of that presentation?
Absolutely.
I've got something here, but I don't think it's as detailed as what you've given us, right?
The presentation tells the full story and it outlines the options and it highlights where you could ask questions. So
great. There's got lots of questions. I'm going to start with Councillor Salter and then Councillor Greer.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Christopher. That was very interesting. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Most welcome.
It is an important wetland. I think we all recognize that. I'm just wondering, was there ever a dollar value on that property? No? The American band never did?
There was an assessment. The property came under $1 million, which is very reasonable for the incredible value of the property. That's because it is in the ALR.
But they just weren't willing to sell?
They weren't willing to sell. That's why I've suggested that when something's of that importance, the city can always have the taking as a resource lands option, but a negotiated agreement is always desirable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Christopher. I think we're very fortunate to have you looking after our property and coming every once in a while to remind us how important it is. With our aquifer going down, do you find that the wetlands is going down as well? Is it someday going to dry up in there?
Well, that's a very good question, and thank you for your comments. It's a pleasure to live in this community and be able to have a chance to study our environment here. Yes, that is a valid concern. The Parksville wetlands have seen some drops in water over the years. I can tell because of the vegetation in the area, where it was once located and where the water is now. However, the area has exhibited incredible resilience. There is still water very late in the year and very good diversity of species. But the consideration from that would be protecting this site and also looking at our overall watershed. It all works together to help resist climate change and local watershed change.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Beer.
Yes,
I said Beer.
that's right. I too would like to add my thanks to you for bringing this forward, and there's no doubt that wetlands are, in my mind, that they are very, very important for the environment and something that the residents here are also very interested in. And the location of these wetlands is also, I think, very important, not only for the city and the well-being of the land and the water, but it also is very closely, it's right next to where trails will be going along in the future, which could also have an added benefit. I also wanted to thank you for the term green infrastructure. I really appreciate that. Seeing that, and I think there's a growing awareness of the roles that the natural habitat can have with flood mitigation and so on. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that feedback. It's definitely interesting to see how our natural environment and built environment work together so well when we make the right judgments. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing to study the environment, and community planning is one of my main areas of interest. So really appreciate that.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Christopher, for coming forward. Can I ask where you are in your studies?
So thank you. I've just completed an MSc in Environmental Science and Management. So that's the merging of science in a local government and provincial, federal, and corporate context. So the management side, just finished, but I will probably do a master's in community planning after that.
Nice to hear. Thank you.
Christopher,
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, what would be the ideal situation for a potential buyer like the city? Buy the entire piece of land, or just buy the wetlands, or what would you recommend? What would be your number one and your plan A and plan B? What would be plan A?
Plan A, from a scientific perspective and a community planning perspective, I would say the best would be to say we already have the covenant on the 32 acres, purchase the 52 acres, purchase the entire 84 acres, but that gives us ownership of the 52 acres and continues the covenant. So to have it all in one secure piece would be by far the best.
Would there be, I'm not talking about anything else but the use of ALR land, remaining at ALR land, but would there be a situation where we would buy, for example, the wetlands and allow some ALR land activity on other parts of the land? Would that be acceptable as an option?
Well, I'm very much in support of ALR land being used wisely. Sometimes the ALR, which is something I've really found interesting in my land use studies, conflict because it was put on as a blanket by the province with conservation objectives. So the concern with that would be the water wells, if that happened, and the upland area being disturbed. So it's better than having the whole property developed or part of it. But by far the best is to secure it, and then the city could find various ways to manage it. And management can involve NGOs, and it can also, generally with a property like this, the management costs are far less than when a property is broken up into small parks, and hence the proactive approach.
And my final question is, let's take a scenario where the entire piece of land was sold. It would require tender loving care over the long term. So is there things that you would permit to go on there in terms of bringing tourists there, bringing people there, putting above, like the Rainforest Trail on the West Coast and the Bog Trail, putting wooden sidewalks and that sort of thing so people would stay off the land? What would be your scenario for, given that the land was all purchased, belonged to the city of Parksville and was to be protected? What would your long-term protection plan be for that property?
I would say that my vision for a property would be as something to connect people with nature and to educate them about the value of watersheds and the well fields, and to experience the bird life up close without disturbing it. I have a sort of a vision, and that would include having a natural trail where there is one already a little bit, and a little bit of a boardwalk, not to circle the marsh, but to go out to a vantage point. And then people would be able to stand there and see the birds nesting, the hawks migrating, and to see how the water levels fluctuate. And there could be a little bit of some small signs even, and it could be very valuable for local schools, for local community. I would say there's real potential for the community to actively benefit from this.
Thanks very much. Any further questions for Christopher? Well, thank you, and I'd like a copy of that, and perhaps we can get together someday and have a chat.
I would welcome that opportunity. I would love to. I will provide you. Thank you very much for tonight.
Thanks for coming. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our third and final delegation is the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, the 2015 candidate, Mr. Burton. Welcome, and make yourself at home.
You don't want me to make myself at home, trust me. I am here today to provide you with just a little bit of an update with regard to Canada Day, and then I have a couple of requests. Starting, Canada Day will look and feel much the same as it has in the last couple of years, with the parade, of course, the Shriners Pancake Breakfast kicking off the day, the parade, the opening ceremonies, and then moving into an afternoon of entertainment. It's a very strongly family-focused day. We're looking at ways to make sure that families are entertained, looked after, without having to dig into their jeans every 15 minutes. So we're actively pursuing sponsorships in the community to defray the costs. We've secured a headliner, the Odds, which are a well-known Juno-nominated Canadian band with some local connections. And then, of course, the end of the day will be the fantastic Thrifties Fireworks Spectacular out over the bay, which always makes me feel really good about making sure that the day's been a success, watching the people enjoy that particular part of the day. I met recently with all of the folks who we engage in regard to traffic and traffic safety. We are going to continue with our previous year's practice of keeping vehicles out of the park. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's so much simpler at the end of the day when it's time to go home if people can disperse on foot. And two, it maintains that family element by keeping some of the trunk bars closed and out of the park, so that the alcohol consumption is minimized and families are able to really enjoy their day down in the park. The request relates to traffic. We would like to maintain closure of 19A between Corfield and Craig Street for the day. We do close the highway, of course, for the parade, but I think that with the volume of foot traffic going back and forth between the downtown and the park, it would be just so much safer if we could keep that section of 19A closed. I've met with Mike Squire, I've met with the RCMP, and I talked briefly with the Parksville Downtown Business Association, and I don't have anybody that's raised any particular obstacles to that, and in fact it was heavily supported by the RCMP and by the COPS volunteer group, and Mike indicated an interest in seeing that happen as well. So that's the biggest request that we have, is if council can approve a closure of 19A between Craig Street and Corfield. I'll do it now. Did you have a question?
Councillor Patterson,
I don't mind being.
A question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You would like to have it from parade till 11 o'clock at night?
Yep. Okay. And we're talking about safety. There's we estimate that we see roughly 20,000 people participate in some aspect of Canada Day over the course of the day between the parade and the activity in the park and the fireworks. And with that many people going into and out of the park on foot, we just think it would be much safer for all concerned if we were able to have that closure. The other thing is a question I have for council. In years past, you provided us with $2,500, and I think it's a budget item, but I need to verify that. And that money is used to manage, to hire professional traffic control. We usually hire JSK, and they've participated so far in our traffic safety meetings. So we just want to make sure that that's part of the package still.
Before we start with the questions, is that a budget item? What do you call it? Not a budget item, but is that a line item?
Off the top of my head, Your Worship, I can't answer that. It may be, but off the top of my head, I can't answer that. We could certainly look it up and let everybody know very shortly tomorrow morning. But as of right now, I don't know.
With regards to the road closure, 19A for pedestrianizing 19A from Corfield to Sir Craig, do we need a motion for that, or do we have to? We'd have to. The RCMP. You've talked to the RCMP. The RCMP are okay with it.
The RCMP are part of our traffic committee.
Makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, sure does. Yeah.
Two ways to do it. Yes, a motion. Either that or refer it to staff for review, options, and a recommendation. But if you did that, then it's going to delay them knowing. We did discuss it to a certain extent this morning at the senior staff. We were thinking even beyond what you were thinking in that section. Is there the possibility of setting up a street market or something for that period of the day, rather than just having an empty highway?
Yep. All
Say
things
that
are
again.
possible.
You'd close more?
No, the same area would be closed, but rather than just having the empty highway, allow some sort of a street market so that there's something going in or going on.
Good idea. Yeah.
In that section of the highway.
Yep. Okay. Questions for Mr. Burden, Councillor Greer?
I don't have any questions, but I think it's all a good idea. I'd be prepared to make the motion if you're ready for a motion this time. So I'd make a motion that we give you the permission to close that down. And I also think the $2,500 is a line item, if I recall right.
I think it is.
whether it is or whether it isn't, I'd also throw that in with the motion as well, that we approve that.
Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Greer. Councillor Oates.
Oh, I could have never aspired to be Councillor Beale, or Greer for that matter. Small goals, I guess. Just for clarity on the motion, Councillor Greer, one is to grant permission for the Highway 19A to be closed down, and the other is if there's not a line item for $2,500 to grant them the $2,500. Is that the intent?
That's right.
Councillor Patterson.
Included in that motion, do you have to have for the possibility of having a market on 19A, or?
We can work on it. It's short notice. We do have a number of vendors signing up for activity in the park.
If there's overflow, maybe they could go.
Certainly if there's overflow, I think it's a great idea. I like it a lot. And even if we were to maybe put a secondary stage up there, or I'll see what I can do. I can't make any promises at this point, but we'll see what we can organize in a month.
Councillor Sultan.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if we can't confirm whether or not it is a line item rather than voting on something that may already exist.
Well, I think the motion is worded in such a way that if it is a line item, it drops. If it's not a line item, we'd pay the $2,500.
Yeah.
I think we've always supported that donation every year in the last 6 years or whatever.
That'll be done. It will be checked if it's a line item, but the way the motion's worded is that if it's not a line item, we'll give them the money. Councillor B.
Just following up on Councillor Salter's comment, may I ask if the request is, would you prefer to have those separated rather than have it combined in a motion? And certainly I would have no objection, but I understand we would have to defeat this motion as it stands right now and then move them again as two separate motions.
That two separate motions is fine, yeah. So Councillor Greer, are you agreeable to that? Two separate motions? One motion to close the street, the other motion is to, if it's not within, if the $2,500 is not a line object, we'd pay the money?
I don't see where it's necessary. However, if that's what everybody wants, it's fine with me. I don't think it's necessary.
Procedurally, I'm not sure procedurally whether you can do what you're attempting to do. We have a motion properly moved and seconded that now that needs to be considered.
So we'll vote
unless
on
the mover and seconder, I suppose, want to withdraw, but we've had discussion on it now, so I believe that appropriately we need to vote on it.
Yeah, to vote on it, yeah. The second motion, the mover and the seconder, are they satisfied with the motion that's been made?
Yes.
Who was the seconder again? Okay, are you satisfied with the motion that was made? Okay. Okay. Okay, I think in either case it's 12 of one and a dozen of the other. Councillor Patterson.
Let me just get clarification from Ms. Comas on that. Who is the expert?
Ms. Comas.
Thank you.
If the mover and seconder both wish to withdraw the motion, they may do so, and then they can introduce two separate motions.
Do them.
Yes, they can still do that after it's been debated. Or they could just pass an amending motion to remove the portion about the council grant and then vote on the motion as amended, and then the main motion, and then introduce another motion to deal with the $2,500 grant. But from a clean, procedurally effective position, voting on the motion as it sits is the cleanest way to do it.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the existing motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, so the motion fails. It's a tie, right? The motion fails? Pardon me? The motion is defeated. That's okay. So now we need another motion. Councillor Greer.
Well, I'll make the next motion that we approve the closing of the 19A.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Oates. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
I guess I'll make the other motion as well, that we...
Okay, we all know what that is. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
So we've passed both those motions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Burden, thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll see you later. Okay, we're at that point in the program where we're under new business. So does anybody have any new business this evening? I have some very minor items, but Councillor, okay, we're going to go this way. Councillor Patterson, Salter, Greer, no? Councillor Oates, you have any new business? Okay, so we'll start off with Councillor Patterson, Councillor Salter, and then Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Worship. It's my pleasure to be the liaison for the Access Oceanside Association. And this Friday, we have the wheel walkabout that is throughout the downtown and area of Parksville. It's going to start here at 1 o'clock at the Parksville Civic and Technology Center, and we'll be meeting in the foyer. And I invite, well, I wish that the press was here, to anyone that would like to join me. Mayor Lefebvre has been a participant in years past, and I'm sure he could talk a little bit about his experiences of having huge eyeglass wear and others. And then I'll talk a little bit further about there also is their third annual dinner and fundraiser. It's on June 16th, and it's at the Royal Canadian Legion. And Mayor Lefebvre will be one of the speakers, as well as our MLA Scott Fraser, Minister Michelle Stilwell, and some other speakers as well. So there's door prizes, silent auction, and it's just it's a great event for doing a little bit of fundraising and awareness as well. And that's again on June 6th. So, thank you.
Thank you. I would encourage, if you can attend, the wheel walkabout is really interesting. If you've never gone 3 blocks in a wheelchair and want to know what that experience is like, it's certainly worthwhile. Or if you want to know what suffering from macular degeneration is like, they put special glasses on, and you have to, or if you're using a walker. So it's quite a learning experience. Thank you. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just have, I think this is a question for clarification. I hope that's what it is. So I've been getting a lot of correspondence from the community regarding the town hall meeting that we had made a motion and all agreed to. The town hall meeting was, the focus of the town hall meeting was to allow the community to dialogue with council and to dialogue with any other experts who would be in attendance with regard to English and River water, the aquifer storage, and the treatment plant. But what I've been hearing is that all they're allowed to do is present comments to council. Council won't be speaking, and that was never the intent of a town hall. So I'm not sure how it became that, because there was, as far as I know, there was never another motion made or any voting that I'm aware of to have changed it from being a town hall meeting to being something that was really quite restrictive with regard to engagement with the community. So I'm just looking for some clarification here around what's happened with regard to that original town hall meeting.
I can answer that. The town hall meeting, the essence of a town hall meeting is for council to listen. Council always does a lot of talking, and we want to hear the comments from the public, from the citizens of Parksville. That having been said, if someone has a question, that's fine. They can ask questions. I don't think that the intent is to make it so severe that we wouldn't tolerate any questions. However, there won't the technical questions. We had an open house last night from 3 to 7. And all of the technical experts were there. The consultant was there. So if somebody wants to know from members of council, what's the flow of the water in the summertime, and what's the capacity for whatever, technical questions wouldn't be necessarily be able to be answered by members of council. And the rationale for the open house is to listen to what people have to say. If there are concerns, if there are more questions that members of council can't answer, we'll note that. The meeting will be recorded, and we'll have more open houses. But the real objective is to listen to what people have to say, to listen to what their concerns are. Are they for it? Are they against it? Are there issues that they still want to know more about? Then we'll have more open houses. Because yesterday at the open house, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. CAO, but we had at least 8 highly technically qualified people from the consultant, from city staff, and from RDN staff that were there. So the objective is to, if the plain answer is yes. If people want to ask questions, they can certainly ask questions of any member of council. But if they ask a certain member of council to say, what is the flow of water in the summertime out of the Englishman River, and what is the flow out of the aquifers, we may not have, members of council may not have that answer. And if those issues of a technical nature are still of a concern, we would have another open house. That's what the open houses are for. The town hall meeting is for us to listen and to get a better understanding of what the remaining concerns of members of citizens of Parksville might be in terms of the water treatment plant.
Thank you for that. So the actual town hall, the purpose of the town hall is a dialogue, and it's for a back and forth conversation between council, the community, and the experts. So it's not it's not a restrictive. We've got open houses, so that's good enough. We don't have to have. People wanted a town hall. They were requesting it, which is why the motion was made. It wasn't really something that I personally require for myself, or I don't think that council personally need that. The community needed it, and so that's why we're doing it. And so it's not putting restrictions on what it is that the community require. This is for their behalf, and it's for them to engage with us and to engage with the experts. The open houses are in place. There seems to be lots of open houses. There are not a lot of town halls, and they want that opportunity to speak in that forum, and that's the point of the town hall. And so it's not for us to try and manage or mitigate it in some ways to allow the community to have their voice.
The open houses last night was yesterday from 3 to 7 was attended by approximately 80 people, and there was a considerable amount of information that was provided to those 80 people. They were able to ask all of the questions of a highly technical nature. I repeat, the town hall meeting is if you do what you're suggesting at a town hall meeting, we'll be there all night, because it's when you start getting into calculations and design and all of those other things, and all the hydrological reports, environmental engineering reports and stuff like that. I don't see that being the place for a town hall meeting. I think a town hall meeting is an opportunity for the citizens to say, these are my concerns. I've been to the open houses. I now like what the city is doing. I now approve of it, or I don't. And to come away from that town hall meeting with a direction to either have more open houses or more town hall meetings of a different nature. But I think the original thought is for us to sit and listen to what people have to say, and that's their opportunity to get up and say, maybe as you've said tonight, I want to have a town hall meeting with all of the experts that are there, and I want to be able to ask all of those questions. But I can tell you that there were 80 people that showed up yesterday, and they asked a lot of technical questions to about the 7 or 8 people that were there to answer those questions. So I think the town hall meeting should take a bit of a different tact in terms of what do you have to say about the water system. But the short answer, if somebody's got a question, yes, they can ask a question. No problem. Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I will be honest, I'm also somewhat conflicted about the way the town hall meeting structure is presented. But that being said, because my understanding is that there would be opportunity for people to have responses as well. And in my experience, sometimes when people present ideas without getting a response, that it's hard for them to kind of grapple with that, and they're not sure what that means. But what I would like to ask, and perhaps this would be best directed to either yourself or Ms. Tardif, our communications expert here, but if people do have, because I understand that if there are a lot of people who turn up and there are a lot of questions, that maybe it's more than we can manage in one night. And is there a way to collect the questions and get them out to people? And I wonder if that could be shared here as well.
Yes, that was done yesterday also. People had the opportunity to sit down and write out the questions.
That's right, Your Worship. And
if they didn't have time to talk to anybody.
I have I think there's about 8 that I need to respond to. Most of them are just asking if the boards were going to be on the website, on the ERWS website, the information boards from the public information session last night. One question related to the wording of the referendum. They were fairly simple questions. I really believe they got the technical information that they needed from the experts last night.
Councillor Rhodes.
I'm wondering, has the city received many inquiries with respect to the format of the town hall meeting?
If I may, Your Worship, not directly. There was a couple of comments that I listened to last night, and as Your Worship was saying, I said by all means, if you have a question on the night of the town hall meeting, by all means ask it. The intent of last night was to give people the technical information that they needed. The thought with the town hall meeting is to give more the high-level policy, political type questions for the public to be able to express their views to council and council's views with regards to that. So
I'd also like to point out that there have been other open houses. Yesterday wasn't the first open house, and there's one tonight in the Noose going on, which started from 3 to 7, I think, at the same time. Councillor Rhodes.
I'm wondering, you know, I know my information is out there. I know my contact information is out there, and as I'm the person that originally made this motion, I'm concerned that not one person has contacted me to the level that Councillor Salter expresses that she's been contacted at. I'm curious as the rest of council, have they been contacted with concerns about the format of the town hall meeting, or is this just a single focus on one councillor?
Councillor Patterson.
I've had 2.
I have 4 or 5.
I had a couple, and my answer was the same as it was this evening to Councillor Salter. Sure, if somebody's got a burning question, they can ask it. I mean, there's no objection to that.
And I have 1.
So not a general hue and cry among the public, but and I was never confused about what the town hall meeting was going to be. I understood that people could come there and they could ask questions, and then I understood that it would be my choice whether or not I answered. If I could answer it, right? When I campaigned, I said that I was not an engineer, and I was not a hydrologist or any of that sort of stuff. I was just there to listen to the people, and that's what I had hoped would be accomplished by this meeting. How it got turned into it's going to be just a gathering from the public, I'm not sure how that got in. That was something that got interpreted by someone, and then it gained a life of its own. But I certainly don't anticipate, nor would I support any form of muzzling of anybody that came forward that wanted to ask questions. And should council wish to respond, I believe that council should be able to respond.
Certainly. And the other important thing about all of this too is that I think it's, the overriding thing for me as mayor is what do you think? What do you think, citizen of Parksville? What do you think of the system with all of the information that you've been given? The prior open houses, the recent open house, the articles in the newspaper that describe what's going on. Yeah. What are still your concerns, or what are some of the issues that are outstanding for you?
Right. And that's why I really appreciate the event that's happening tonight in the Noose, which is a duplicative event that happened here last night, where all of the technicians were available to answer the questions. So the ability to have your questions answered has certainly been there. The ability to pose questions to the city or to ERWS, that option is always there. You can do that through the website. And so I'm not sure why there's a confusion about what's going to happen on the 28th. I'm looking forward to the community at large coming out, and I'm looking forward to the dog wagging the tail.
I can visualize that. Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to clarify that the email that I received did make reference to what I did read in the paper, the information that said comments only, please. So I think that some people take that to mean that there's no opportunity for asking a question for which someone might actually make a response, even if the response might be, I wouldn't have enough background to answer that fully.
This is not the end of the meetings. There'll be other meetings. I'm sure that there'll be other open houses and other town hall meetings until we get the grant money and we get going on this. But it's a great opportunity for me anyway, to hear what people have to say. Councillor Greer.
Yes, I have a report. You missed me. Anyways, my comment is that I attended a rec commission convention in Victoria a couple weekends ago, and it was really quite interesting. So I'll just give you a little rundown of some of the topics. The first one was a transgender presentation, and these people wanted, of course, the swimming pools and rec centers to have co-ed showers and co-ed washrooms. So that went over pretty good, rather funny at times. I think the two guys, I think, were actually two girls, but it was an interesting conversation. Another one was a seminar on kids today, and they said the circle they move has gotten smaller. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, where I come from, 8 and 10-year-olds could play outside and move around the community. The next generation, the circle will become somewhat smaller. Today's kids can't leave the yard without supervision. This not only eliminates exercise, but also hinders independence. So that was an interesting topic as well. Great seminar, what they call the Great Seminar on Managing Priorities. We spend too much time working on things every day that are not important. That is why we are working longer hours and accomplishing less. If you remember, I think back in the 80s, they thought we would work less hours and accomplish more. But because we're spending so much time on maybe BlackBerries and sending messages, and a lot of the electronic things that are happening today have actually slowed our production down, and we are actually working longer and gaining a lot less. And I can vouch for this because I have a daughter-in-law that works for Chevron. Right now she flew on the Chevron jet to Paris and a few other places. But anyways, she goes into work at 5 o'clock and gets home around 7. And so you can see where they must be spending a lot of time maybe doing things that aren't productive. Anyways, the other one was a lady that gave us clear language and design. Literacy, 48% of Canadians have low literacy capabilities, which could maybe include me. 36% of immigrants can't speak English. 8 out of 10 people over 80, which I'm not quite there yet, have low and dwindling literacy capabilities. With high tech, we are now using more acronyms and leaving some people out of the conversation. And that is the way they presented it is, and they had lots of examples where you can read 5 or 6 paragraphs, and all of the acronyms are in there, and they know what they're talking about, but nobody else knows what they're talking about. And then we saw the world champion skateboarder, and he holds the Guinness Book of Records for doing 1,000 circles on 2 skateboards. And this guy is 52 years old. Of course, he did this when I think he was a kid, but he had 2 skateboards, and he goes around in circles, and he demonstrated, and he did about 60 circles in no time flat, so that was pretty interesting. So overall, and then we had, of course, a great meal and a great dance, and we had entertainment, so all in all, it was a pretty good convention.
So you're the expert. What's going to happen with the washrooms? Is it going to be co-ed, or?
I'm all for it.
All right. Thank you very much.
No, I think the older generation wouldn't be for it, but the younger generation, I guess, is anything goes.
Well, thank you for that. It's always interesting to see what's going on. I think the issue of immigration and the ability to speak English is a problem, but that's something that I know that a lot of ministries, provincial and federal, are working on. I have just a couple of items to report to you. Number one, at 5 o'clock on Friday night at the Historical Society in the park, down at the corner of 19A and Herring Gull or Franklin Gull Road, I forget which one it is. We'll be opening I've been asked to officially open the farmers market. And of course, on Sunday, I think the Sunday market doesn't start until probably June or July, but there'll be a Sunday market it won't be a farmer's market, it'll be sort of a flea market type thing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
More artisan.
Pardon me?
Artisan.
Artisans, yeah, okay. And then at 7 o'clock on that same evening, the Legends show is on, sponsored on behalf of the Cancer Society, and we had our gentleman here several weeks ago talking about it, and I'm looking forward to that because for once in my life I'll be able to say that Elvis is in the building, because Elvis is appearing apparently, so he's here, and I just leave that for your information. Councillor Beal and I guess we'll meet before we go. We have one more council meeting before we leave, but you and I are going to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference in Edmonton, which goes on for about 4 or 5 days, and we're looking forward to that. The agenda looks very, very interesting, and we're going to a province that now has a new provincial government that they've never had in the last 42 years. So it's going to be interesting to listen to the mayors of Edmonton and probably the mayors of Calgary, and we'll probably hear from the new premier of the province while we're there.
Going by private jet?
No, we haven't bought a private jet yet. That's next year's budget. Other than that, that's about it. There's been a lot of other things going on, but we'll save that for later. We have to move into camera, so I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn this particular council meeting. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor? We are all adjourned, and I need a motion. Do I need a motion to move into camera? So I need a motion to move in camera. Councillor Salter, Councillor Greer, we are in camera. Miss Bottomley.